Greetings, this is Lansing Online News Radio, LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. Put the shaking his finger, no. Bill's now trying to figure out how the board got screwed up.
How's that for a while?
They find creative ways to. This is Everything is, it's recording. You want me to start it again?
Technology.
That's the one that I've never seen lit before, which did make me wonder. This is WLNZ 89. Try it now. This is WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is LCC Radio. I'd never seen this button lit before. Now I did get it on, but that's not.
Good thing you have the camera so we can be just another pretty face.
That's recording, so we're capturing all of this for posterity. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan.
Where's your dad, George?
George is my brother.
Your brother?
Mm-hmm. George Samadinas? No, that he and my dad were partners.
Hmm.
I do have a brother, George. But different family.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan.
I've never seen it like this. Whoever left it is.
You have any idea what it might
Is
be?
there anything at all?
We're
that's
always on
different?
this, which brings up this.
Yeah.
I'm on record. All of these are on with the volume up.
Use comp, Google. There's one. So you can hear the music right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got you. Let me just shut it off and bring it back up again and we'll see. Yeah, there's nothing different.
Mm-mm.
It's annoying.
We've been doing this for, what, 3 years? And I think this, at first it happened fairly frequently, but now we usually have all the possible screw-ups figured out. Sometimes what it is that they just unplug this board somewhere between here and there, and we have no idea where. see if I see anything different from his board.
Just means we have to talk faster for the show.
Means we could talk, but they wouldn't hear.
Some days it's best. So maybe if we just tax the stuff in a good way. Good strict laws and let's tax it.
According to the Department of Treasury, we can't because it's medicine. I didn't thought of that. It's interesting.
You know, alcohol is medicine too. I mean, the hypocrisy of our society is what is huge.
It's been interesting. It's been quite a controversial issue again, for sure.
I mean, not that alcohol has been the solution to the country's problems, but it's always been with us.
What we pay for the mass incarceration of marijuana users alone is enough to take care of some serious debt. It's a lot of money that we pay to house all those prisoners.
And it's heavily minority, I bet.
Yep, and all the wives get to go on welfare to take care of the kids. I'm glad to live in Ingham County, I will say that, because other counties in the state are so far behind on this issue that
Well, you know, the sheriff and prosecutor aren't exactly progressive on it.
Stuart's been really,
There you go.
he's been fair, since the law changed for the net post. I wouldn't say the same for the sheriff.
Well, those two don't get too far apart usually.
So fun good music, I find. I just met Bonnie at the Forsberg's house. Do you know the Forsberg's house? Yeah, they had a going away party. I'm from Reading Township, so I was amazed that hundreds of people showed up.
Well, they invited a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know I got it in a couple of
Oh, did
places.
you? Yeah, they're just really super incredibly nice people.
Dennis's dad, man.
No, I think he's up north. I think he went up there to say bye to him. I think he spent a couple weeks with him, which was good.
Dennis can be a little goofy, but he's just so
Yeah.
nice.
He is cute. He's kind of a nerd, you know. Yeah. I know I had went with a team of attorneys and done a walkthrough on their buildings. I didn't see anything that really stuck out at me as, large scale or anything. I mean, apparently they want everybody to do it in their basements, which I don't really get why you would want any of this in a residential area instead of, I think industrial buildings are safer. You've got the security cameras and.
The politics of so many things are just so bizarre. Because there's things that Obama feels like he has to do, and there's things that Bush did that he thought he had to do, and then they can skate on other things.
Right.
What else could it be?
Yeah, it's gotta be your book, because otherwise we'll be able to talk over it.
Except you should be able to get rid of the Google
Oh, yeah.
and go dead, and you're not able to.
Turn everything off and bring everything back.
Let me start the program over again just to see.
And those two are always up, right?
Hmm. They don't make any difference.
They don't
They're
make
only
any-
for monitoring.
Okay.
But I thought maybe, I mean, people periodically rewire something, and it could have made a difference. That's what I brought it up.
Yeah, this, I mean, it's really simple. I mean,
I
this
know.
shouldn't, there's nothing,
The problem is it should be idiot-proof.
yeah.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is Bonnie Bucqueroux with Lansing Online News Radio, soon to be joined by my co-host Bill Castanier. It's made life exciting here, Bill. We have no idea what we did, but we found the problem is if we don't know what the magic key is, we'll never be able to do it
I
again.
don't want to try to replicate that. Dang.
One of those makes
It's
you
like-
wonder.
It's like using an Apple iPod.
It is. It's sort of like we went into a little bit of late labor, like Princess Kate over there, right? And it took a little longer than we expected to reach birthing time here.
I haven't been following that very closely.
It's a boy.
It's a boy, yes. That's. I know everybody
Didn't
was
matter.
expecting a girl.
Didn't matter.
It doesn't matter?
No, they changed the rules.
Oh, did they? About-
They haven't quite. They're talking about it, and they plan to, but the paperwork isn't completed on that. I was telling Bill earlier, though, when we were looking at the name ideas for this new baby, I think they should name him Trayvon. I've heard that name so much lately. I've learned to really love it. I think Trayvon would be
It's a nice name.
King Trayvon. I hear that the odds are it's going to be George, which seems much duller in comparison.
They're English. It's like their food.
I think there's a list of approved names, isn't there? I mean, doesn't it have to be? It follows some sort of formula with ancestors.
I would
and-
expect it does, right?
Yeah, but at the rate that this family is going, they could wait 50 or 60 years because he's not going to be king for a long time. This one,
Right.
I mean, Mom is hanging in there. What, her mother lived to 102,
Yes.
and she looks like she's going strong. She's got another 10 or 15 years in her, and then Charles, and God, then William, and then so this kid is going to have to wait forever.
Give it up.
Yeah, give it up. He's going to get 1 year.
Be 97.
God. Now you did have an announcement we wanted to get in quickly.
Right. I'll be very quickly. The author B.A. Shapiro, who has written
I thought it was B.A. Guthrie.
Guthrie. No, Shapiro. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, B.A. Shapiro has written the book The Art Forger. Will be in Lansing Thursday, July 25th, 7 p.m. at the Eastwood Schulers.
That is this Thursday.
This Thursday. It's a very clever book about a young woman who is a copyist for an online company who was approached to copy a Degas. And she does that, and that's about all I want to tell you. But it's people who like art and like art history and art techniques are going to love this book. It's doing very well nationally.
And so she's from here, or she?
No, she's from Boston,
Oh, okay.
and she's based it on a famous heist that took place in Boston, I think in 1990, where the artwork was never recovered.
Didn't they just find some artwork burned?
Yes, they did, and that
Not this stuff.
no, not this stuff, but it has a similar kind of play to it. I
Ah.
mean, you can pick up the day we talked. That was in the newspaper.
Hmm.
That story about the artwork being burned because the art had been allegedly stolen by some bumpkins, who once they have $50 million or $100 million worth of art, how do you get rid of it?
I mean, yeah.
You don't, need some hot art. It's hard to get rid
eBay
of.
is not the right.
No,
choice.
eBay is not. So the mother decided she'd just burn it.
Yeah.
That's the story. Was it the real art that was burned?
Who knows? We'll never know.
There's those kind of plays off in this book. That's why I think people like it.
Oh, cool.
Just never know where it's going to go.
Well, I was reading the other day that we're talking about the demise of Detroit, and it headed into bankruptcy now, and some emails suggest it always was headed there, that the fix was in long ago, and that was the plan. But I was reading the other day about how stored away at the DIA is Howdy Doody, the original puppet, worth $1 million. And much as I was one of those people who, when I originally heard they might be selling off there was a plan to sell off some of the assets of the DIA, and I thought that was a really bad idea, that if a culture starts eating itself like that, that's not a very wise thing to do. Somehow the thought that if you could get $1 million for Howdy Doody, I mean, how important is it to hang on to Howdy? You know?
It was important enough that there was great litigation for it.
Yes,
Because
yes.
that was a big case. It was litigated.
Yeah. But they don't even display it.
No, it's been on display once.
So it's hidden away in the bowels of the art museum. The city's in desperate trouble. I mean, what 40% of the streetlights don't work, and I mean, it's in this kind of disastrous shape. What is it, the one section, Brightmoor section, not only is the regular response time of the police 58 minutes, in that community it's 2 hours. 2 hours response time. You can't, that's not a functioning city. I don't know.
And ambulances hardly function at all.
Yeah. And they said that, for example, I heard this morning, so many of the fire trucks don't work. They need new fire trucks. But the minute they get new fire trucks, they have a problem because all of the fire truck buildings, the firehouses, are so old that you can't get new trucks through the door. So because the buildings are 80 years old and the fire trucks are bigger, if you get a new truck, you have nowhere to put it. I mean, these are the kinds of problems from that kind of decades and decades of neglect. So I would like to turn to our monthly visitor, who's, sometimes I wonder about him, why he ever shows up once a month, Eric Schertzing, our Ingham County Treasurer, and involved with the Ingham County Land Bank. What is going on? What do you think what's going to happen to Detroit now? There's a few months as this grinds through. First of all, will it get stopped in the courts?
Oh, this is just going to take a lot longer than people are hoping, namely the governor. It's going to be fascinating. Obviously, Judge Aquilina slowed this all, down. We're going to see where the courts come in, but it's a very fundamental constitutional issue on the retiree benefits.
That's in the state constitution.
It
says that they
was
can't
put
be
there
touched.
for a reason. It wasn't put there by the Democrats. That was a Republican convention, so it's the history there.
Oh, that was done in Concon?
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting history.
Wow. No, this could take a while just for that issue to be solved, and then even if the federal courts do get jurisdiction, do you think it will take far longer than the 6 months to go through?
Boy, it just has to unfurl all of this and deal with very fundamental issues of bankruptcy law that won't just impact potentially cities in Michigan, but this has nationwide impact. These things, generally are 3 years. The notion that they're hoping for, 12 to 15 months is, I think that's just Pollyanna.
Ultimately, where does Detroit come out on the other side?
Well, it depends how much that artwork at the Detroit Institute of Art is worth.
$2 billion. And I was discussing today that they're not sure if the waterworks and sewage disposal facilities are part of the bankruptcy. There's some question whether they could sell those off.
Privatize them, you
Yep.
mean? So someone else would run them?
Or another municipality would buy it, possibly, or sell them to privatize.
Well, the city of Flint can't be very much further behind Detroit in terms of its economic problems, I would assume. So we may have other cities in Michigan already that are vulnerable.
Well, absolutely. The experts say that Lansing's on that list down the road. Not all that many years if some things don't improve.
We know Benton Harbor is already under an emergency. We have cities already under emergency managers. But I can understand the federal government's reluctance, realizing that they have cities across the country like this, that, they might be able to bail out Detroit at one time, but boy, that would really open the floodgates, wouldn't it, for all these other cities that are struggling?
I mean, the dominoes that could fall depending on how this gets resolved. There will be significant national attention. It's going to make it harder and more expensive to market municipal debt. There's just going to be a lot of small, subtle, it's going to depend on where you're from, but there's going to be a lot of ramifications that roll out from this one.
When we talk about other cities that are vulnerable, the majority of them are here in the Midwest. It's the industrial heartland that sort of got hit the hardest, but Las Vegas could still be on that list, couldn't it? There's some other...
With the vacant property campaign stuff and things like that, when you look across the country, it's pretty interesting what isn't out there in a lot of places. If you have an old, decaying urban core, people moved out of it. People left it behind. Annexation laws in other states probably are what might save some of them. You know, Indianapolis was able to rebuild because the annexation laws just allowed them to make Indianapolis huge,
Right.
and they were able to bring the suburbs into the urban core. For
Metro
economic.
areas make very good sense, but when it's not going to be possible to persuade too many of those communities.
Yeah.
I can't see Okemos saying, let's share our nice school budget with Lansing.
Well, East Lansing certainly wasn't very interested in engaging in those conversations.
Yeah.
You know, it might be part of the Northwest Ordinance. I mean, there were a lot of rules embedded into home rule situations in these Midwestern states.
So now, where do we go from here in terms of Lansing? How do we keep Lansing from falling into emergency manager status? How are we doing?
Well, you know, the land bank keeps fixing up and selling off houses, trying to raise values there. We've got a lot of development, fortunately, going on here. It's going to be tough for Lansing to follow the same path. I mean, we've got the state capitol, we've got Michigan State University, General Motors, insurance, healthcare. I mean, the list of concentrated industries here are significant. But there probably are going to have to be some pretty tough negotiations with the employee groups. I mean, that is the big cost, whether you're a school district, a city, or a county. There's only so many places to get it.
Yes, yes, and I heard a retired Detroit police official on this morning who's on his retirement now and worried about his pension. And that's going to be a wrenching blow to people. I mean, even a 10 or 20% cut in their benefits is going to be devastating. What I hadn't realized is they had opted out of Social Security, so he wouldn't even get Social Security if his pension goes away.
Yeah, you know, the challenge with a Detroit or a community is that they have more than twice as many retirees, beneficiaries, than they have employees. Ingham County, I think, is about 1-for-1, which is, you know, enough. But we're in pretty good financial shape.
Now, you said there's an auction coming up this week, right? Or is it
The
this
Treasurer's
week?
annual tax auction is the 24th, Wednesday of this week. We'll have another one August 24th for the leftover stuff. Tax foreclosures continue to be pretty elevated. The quality of the properties is improving, whether that's good or bad, depending on how you look at it. But you know,
So better homes are getting foreclosed on.
well, it does mean that the worst ones just aren't out there anymore, that we've moved a lot of that absolute worst inventory through already and have been, you know, demolishing some of it. We're in the middle of doing another 50 home demolition project right now.
So the new ones probably aren't candidates to be demolished.
No,
Those are probably homes that will be reused.
yeah, you know, the challenge of the whole process, the land bank was fortunate with the city of Lansing to have fairly significant federal funding from both the Bush and the Obama administration for housing. Those dollars are going away pretty significantly. The problem's not going away so much. But the better quality of houses does mean that the treasurer, rather than the land bank, this is my treasurer hat first, is able to auction more of them off. I'm not the biggest fan of auctions. You know, we're trying to come up with some tools. I'm putting owner occupancy covenants on a number of the houses and trying to attract better buyers and making sure people have a chance to get inside of the properties and evaluate what they might be buying. But, you know, time will tell. We're constantly vigilant, monitoring it and tweaking the process every year as we get smarter, hopefully.
How many vacant homes would you estimate there are in Lansing?
Well, you know, when we started into this downturn, I think this was off postal delivery. Now, this isn't structures, this is housing units. So an apartment of 2 units, there were 6,000.
Wow.
And there's little reason to believe there's really many less than that, because we haven't taken that many down. Some, but thousands.
Now, you're doing something also coming up with clergy, is that right? That you have a new initiative for people who are threatened with foreclosure?
Well, you know, I do like to sleep at night, so the fact is I do foreclose on property. We do everything we can to prevent that foreclosure from happening in the first place. That's the best thing for our neighborhoods. County treasurers last year worked with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority to tap into some of the hardest hit funds from the federal government to allow us to take care of delinquent taxes in addition to the historic assistance for delinquent mortgages. You know, Michigan is one of those states that really had a double tsunami. We had mortgage foreclosure and then tax foreclosure overlays that. So we've been able to help, you know, thousands of people with those dollars in Michigan in that program that rolled out in January. Today's unveiling was an effort by MISHJA around the state and here in Lansing to bring the faith community into that network. There's still a stigma to reaching out and saying, I can't pay my taxes. I might lose my home. Stigma's gone down because of what we've been through, but it's still hard to make the county treasurer very approachable for somebody that's behind on their taxes. So we're hoping that the faith community and other groups like that can help.
Now, do they do some kind of counseling, or is their job to identify people and connect them to the resources?
Identify and connect. A lot of the MISHJA program stuff is online now. I mean, things have obviously migrated there. We have a number of counseling agencies in the Lansing area, though, that people can contact directly. Center for Financial Health is the main one that we work with. There was a woman there that was saved by the airport. Alice had gotten behind. She had a couple of children that passed away, and she had to deal with the wrap-up on that. And we were able to work with her both at the county and at the state to allow her to save her home. And she gave her very heartfelt thanks today.
Eric, you mentioned mortgage foreclosures. Now, is there anything that can be done to kind of push the companies that own those mortgages to put the property back on the market faster? They seem to drag.
Well, I'm sure there is. Very few communities in this country have really figured that out. It's getting to be 6, 7, almost 8 years now that I've been pretty intimate with this process. The financial services community has not gotten much smarter. The economy is improving in areas, and folks are coming in the private marketplace is doing cleanup on the foreclosed houses, but the folks that hold them just don't seem to have gotten any smarter. It's just not what they're about, and they never could figure out how to become about that.
Are the people who are coming to a place like the auction and sort of taking advantage, if I can say that, of the foreclosures that are available, are they nowadays more likely to be a family looking for a bargain, or are they a speculator looking to turn those into rental units?
Well, we're doing everything we can to try to attract more owner occupants. But most of the buyers are, renters, investors, and that's why I try to avoid auctions. As treasurer, I've put an owner occupancy covenant on the auction terms for a number of the properties. So the buyer has to, or the person they sell to if they buy it and fix it up, has to live there for 20 years. They have to be invested in that community. Last year we had a family of 4 were living in their car that showed up, bought a house on the north end that they fixed up, and they're moved into that. So that's the warm story.
Right.
But I can also point to houses that we sold at the auction 2 years ago that nothing has happened to them. They're still sitting there. The investor must be hoping the market's going to come along and make them some money without having to lift a hand.
We just saw today that they were expecting a 1.5% increase in housing sales this month, and instead they saw a 1.2% decline. So there still seem to be surprises in the housing market as we keep hearing about this boom that's starting to really take hold now. Then all of a sudden we get a month like this that suggests that maybe the boom isn't really.
Yeah, I think those were the national numbers.
Yeah.
So I think the Mid-Michigan numbers were pretty strong.
Oh, okay.
We fell further. Hopefully we'll have a little bit further to come back.
So what other programs do you have on your agenda then?
The land bank has a bunch of homes that are for sale. We're actually looking for lower income households. I mean, it's easy to sell houses to the middle class. We need to find families that are at or below 50% of area median income. So if you're a family of 4 making $25,000 to $30,000, we want to talk to you about how you could potentially be a homeowner. There's down payment assistance programs. We've got counseling, again, through the Center for Financial Health. They're our partner with the city. So we need those folks that have been in apartments or been looking for quality housing. Affordable housing is available in this market, but the quality is so poor. And those folks, if we can identify them, get them into the home buyer club, and start talking about what this process is, we can put them into homes.
Business Insider ran a feature last week, which was homes in Detroit for less than $500. I have news for you. I don't think you'd really want to be, packing up your items and getting ready to move in next week. A lot of them were like burned out in the inside.
No copper.
No copper, no nothing, no aluminum
Yeah,
left, that sort of
the
thing.
demolition has already been done for you,
Yes,
so it
yes.
speeds up the
Yeah. So quality
recreation.
housing does matter. So what are we looking at in terms of if I'm a family that's making 24,000, what am I talking about as a monthly house payment?
We've got places that your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, it's going to be $350 to $550 a month.
Oh,
I mean, you're
gonna
talking
pay that or
you're
more in
talking
rent.
less than what they're paying on rent.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then you'd have down payment assistance as well?
The city's program has down payment assistance,
that's
so
great.
we've got 20 houses that fit that criteria in Lansing. And we've closed on 30 houses this year. I mean, the market from our perspective continues to move along well. It's just it's tough to take somebody that's in that $20,000 to $30,000 income
Yeah.
and have them. Our society doesn't tell them that they're going to have the American dream of home ownership.
No.
It really beats them down to
Although I
anything
do know
but.
the days when the investment bankers told them they could buy a $300,000. And that's part of the reason that we have a little trouble now, isn't it? Aaron?
$300 a month.
For three, yeah. It'd be that nice ARM that goes from 0.5% to 22% overnight. That can
Yeah.
that was
So it isn't about the monthly payment. There's credit issues, obviously,
Sure.
and they have to have a history of, paying things on time. So it's not everybody. Not everybody should be a homeowner.
Yeah.
None of this is saying that everybody should. So
There are times when the plumbing goes bad that I think I shouldn't be either, Eric. I mean, it's
that's the challenge with
It is.
low moderate housing.
Yeah, one thing can go wrong and you have no savings.
Yeah, I was talking to a neighbor down the road, and the septic tank went bad, and she had no idea that now meant $25,000 for a self-contained unit because it turns out that the land no longer perks.
Mhm.
So those are the surprises that you run into periodically that make you wonder why you did these things. So,
Well, affordable housing is not on well and septic.
is that right?
And Habitat for Humanity, for example, just in the time that I've been doing this, they've really woke up to that, and the state has also. If we're going to assist people with housing, we're not going to set them up to have trouble down the road.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
You shouldn't be doing a Habitat house because of that income category on a well and septic, because where are they ever going to have the money to pay for that new drain field or that new well? It just isn't going to be there.
Wow.
If a washer or a dryer goes out, or a furnace maybe, but well and septic is just so that's why Lansing is such a great place for people to live.
Going to get everybody back downtown.
We're trying.
Yeah. This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We've been talking with the Ingham County Treasurer Eric Schertzing, and this is sort of on the eve of watching Detroit and its economic problems. It certainly makes Lansing look in pretty good shape in comparison. The more
Absolutely.
you talk, we have a lot more assets and a lot more opportunities. I'm hoping.
Just the sheer size of that city, both geographically and population.
Yeah.
Lansing can be more nimble.
Right, yeah. I mean, Detroit went from 2 million down to 700 and some thousand. You can't, and I was asking though, can you shrink a city and end up better than you were before you started? Would good planning allow us to do that?
Well, I think you can, but there's no model, or there's very few models in the world.
Right.
Planners aren't about getting smaller.
No.
Capitalism is not about less; it's about more always.
Yeah.
So for folks that can wrap their mind around, less being more, there is a future.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then one last thing you wanted to talk about, a little bit of an update on the bike plan?
Yeah, Bike Share is coming to Lansing. We're going to roll that out on August 4th. We'll be downtown at the City Hall on the pavilion, or on the sidewalk there.
That plaza?
On the plaza, thank you. Looking for a word there. Noon to 3, August 4th. Bike Share comes to Lansing. You can Google us, find us online, give us a call, and do a membership. We're still looking for members. It's going to be a rental system. From Rio Town to Old Town, from City Hall eastward. We're still working out the placements, but bike racks will go in about a week before the August 4th launch, when the bikes come to town.
Do they have little panniers on them so I can do my shopping?
There will be baskets so that
good.
you can do some shopping, and this is smart bike technology, dumb rack smart bike. The technology for the rental and everything is right on the individual bike. as is the tracking system and all those things to keep track of what's going on.
Can I put a playing card in the spoke so it makes that nice sound? Or?
Mickey Mantle.
You probably can.
Because that, and I'll bring my own little bell that goes ching 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 ching.
That's something I thought of. You should put bells on.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have to ask Lynn Martinez. She's been doing the negotiations with
Bells
the
are the
company.
best
but
thing you can put on a bike.
I love those. Yeah. Yeah.
They're
That'd be fun.
required in some biking places across the United States. I think Chicago requires them.
Do they really?
On the river or the waterfront.
Well, it could be.
So you know somebody's coming up on you. They ring the bell.
I know there's a basket. I know there's a solar charger on the back. I don't remember, but I have rung a bell recently. So
Haven't
maybe
rung
there's
the
a bell
bell.
on them
Okay.
too.
One of those things for me in particular would be good if when you back up it goes beep 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 too, so it warns the people behind you. Well, wonderful. So any other news that we need to know about? We'll be looking forward to your next month's visit and find out what's going on in the city of Lansing. Lots of things going on. But don't forget the auction date is this week.
This Wednesday, the 24th of July at the Lansing Center, starting at 10 a.m.
How many pieces of property?
109.
Now,
So
how
lot
would
of
I,
houses.
if I decided all of a sudden I wanted to be a real estate entrepreneur, what would I have to do? My bank would give me some sort of little
Sure.
note of credit I would bring you?
Show up at 9 to register. Bring $1,000 cash so you can get your bidder card.
Oh,
Got to have something behind you.
okay.
We do need 10% down, that day. So if you bid 20,000, you need to bring us another 1,000 that day to make it 2,000, and we'll settle up in 14 days.
Wow.
Try to make it simple. Bring in the real people.
And he has a post out back with the blindfold. If you don't, if you don't settle up within the 40 days, they have a very easy program for that as well. Yes.
That's what my attorney's for.
We're a civilized society.
We're civilized.
God bless us, everyone.
I've been watching too much of Ray Donovan on that cable show. Well, thank you, Eric. This
Thank
has been
you.
delightful. We're going to switch gears now, and we're going to talk to our guest, Robin Schneider, and she's with the National Patients' Rights Association. And I met Robin. We've been Facebook friends for a while. I recognized you on Facebook. We knew each other from that. But we met each other not too long ago. Oh, we were at the unfortunate, it was a going away party, but it was not the kind of going away party that many of us would be happy about. It was the going away party for Dennis Forsberg, on the eve of when his family was taking him down to Butner, the federal facility in South Carolina, where he will be serving 3 years as one of the Okama 7. And it was a devastating evening to watch that family have to say goodbye. And I was pleased to see literally hundreds of people, the cars lined the street all the way down the subdivision. People wanted to come and tell him how much they were going to miss him and give him their best. It was a very difficult evening, wasn't it?
It was difficult, and I really, my heart just aches for his wife, Joanne. They've been married 30-some years, never had any legal trouble in the past, so it's something that I think a lot of us, I also live in Meridian Township, and I knew several of the people who were sentenced to prison in this situation. It was just such a heartbreaking thing to see them go through it. I think the majority of time people think of, hard criminals, the people that go to prison, and when it's one of your neighbors, it's kind of shocking because you're going, why would they put these good people? This is a good family in prison. And I think what happened in this situation, obviously medical marijuana is still illegal at a federal level, and the state of Michigan made it legal. So they got caught in that trap between state and federal law. I had been through the facility with a team of attorneys, where the growing was taking place, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I didn't consider that to be a large-scale operation. I never would have thought that the federal government would have targeted something like that. So I was really surprised.
We've never had an answer about what really brought them to the attention of the federal government, because there are facilities far larger than that are
much larger.
Yeah, that are still being, the federal
still
government is
operating.
is not coming after them. So we really don't know what happened in that case.
I've heard different speculation, but I really don't know. I will say that we do have petitions for them that we are passing around to send to the president, asking for a release or a pardon. But Other
Dennis
than
suffers
that,
from some medical conditions. He has phlebitis, which is of concern.
Mhm.
And that's the reason that he's at a facility separate from his son Lance, because it would actually have been better. They had hoped that they could serve their time in the same facility so that one could keep an eye on the other. But because of Dennis's medical conditions, he is at a separate facility. And it puts a horrible burden on the families. One of the things they are learning is it's often a jobs program in rural areas, and they face long drives to go down and visit both family members. It's a huge strain on the family. They have a daughter in college, financial stress, emotional stress, the physical stress, all these issues surfacing.
well, I think, I'll be making that drive as well to visit them, of course. And, Lance Forsberg, I consider him to be a good friend, and I'm sure we'll be friends forever. Just, so he would come over and help me with my tomato garden and, bring the manure for the garden. And just, he didn't want anything. He was just there to help. And we did a grow a row for the food bank project every year together. So we're both avid gardeners, and we use that to try to give back to the community. And so I think gardening was something that came naturally for
It
him, that he actually loved, and tried to apply his talent to a new law, and got in trouble for it. I sat through all of the hearings, all of the sentencings, all of the federal court cases, drove to Grand Rapids over and over again. I did go to support them. And one of the things that really caught me off guard during the hearing, and the courtrooms were packed with supporters, was when the federal judge said, I have no choice but to sentence you to a mandatory minimum sentence to
Yes.
teach you respect for the law. And everybody gasped, because it had the opposite effect. It didn't teach any of us to respect the law. It didn't teach any of us to respect the government or that courtroom or the judicial process. What it did was make everybody angry. And so I don't really, and then the mandatory minimum comment, here we are a couple months later, and a gentleman who was caught with 8,000 plants
Right.
gets probation. And we're going, well, obviously, when the judges are telling us I have no choice but to give you the mandatory minimum, obviously that's not true if a guy that had 8,000 plants did not get a mandatory minimum. So I think that that's just something that they say that I don't think they have to do that. I think they can be merciful, and I think they should be merciful in these situations.
We're finding out too that ours is not a country that allows for or has much opportunity for people to do graceful resignations. In other countries like Japan, if a judge is forced into a box where they're doing something that they find morally reprehensible, they will say, I can no longer do this job, and they will resign to try to bring attention to the fact that they feel that what they're being asked to do is immoral, if not illegal, in those cases. And we don't see that. I wish more people within the system, because some of the comments made in this case by some of the judges were that they felt their hands were tied. We see people with disparities in sentencing on issues like race, related to things like having a handgun on you, whether you ever showed it or not, those kinds of things, where people are going away for extraordinary sentences, mandatory minimums on all sorts of drug cases. We had the $1 million babies here in Michigan, where if you had more than 2.2, was it 2 kilograms of cocaine, you went away for mandatory life with no parole. And we saw 18-year-olds, 17, 18-year-old kids sentenced under those laws. And all we were really doing was spending a fortune to keep them behind bars. And they really was sending, as you say, not a message about justice or mercy, but a message about something being wrong with the law.
Right.
Now, your job is here to try to work with the legislature to change some of the laws and help implement parts of this law in a way. You're working a lot right now on House Bill HB 4271.
That is correct. Our organization, National Patients' Rights Association, has been lobbying for House Bill 4271. And what that is, it's the Michigan Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center Act. And what that does is regulate the distribution of medical marijuana.
So it sort of replaces the dispensaries. They've changed the terminology. Now they're calling them provisioning centers. Is that still a dispensary?
It very regulated dispensary is what that would be. Yes, they would dispense medical marijuana. The pharmacy likes to use the word dispense, so they agreed to come up with a new word that would be provisioning center.
Ah. So it was the pharmacies that objected to the...
There's certain words that, they don't like us to use. So
that's interesting. I was reading over the bill. I don't know, shows you
Mhm.
what I do for fun. But I was reading over the latest iteration of the bill. I think it's expected maybe to be voted on in September. Is that right?
We are expecting a judiciary hearing in September, yes.
What are the clauses that currently are in the bill? One of the things people seem concerned about is that there could be a lot of last minute changes. So what are the elements that are good and bad from your perspective in the bill now? And where are the areas that those of us who would care about this issue should be alert to changes?
Obviously, some of the representatives are going to want to put their own stamp of approval on the bill. One of the things right now that they're working on is mandatory testing, and they want to know that the product has been tested and that it's safe before it goes out to the patients.
So it will be tested for potency. Will it also be tested for contaminants?
I'm guessing that it will be tested more for mold and contaminants and make sure that it's safe for medical use before it goes to the.
I want to clarify one thing for our listeners, though. This would have no impact on what happened to the Oklahoma 7.
Absolutely
Two-
not.
Right.
Yeah,
That
we're
is
talking
that
federal
is a federal issue
right, federal and state.
that needs to be changed at a federal level to help them.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Robin Schneider of the National Patient Rights Association. And keep in mind, however, Bill, that unfortunately in certain counties in the state, we're seeing a lot of people arrested under Michigan law. And it seems to be that the attitude is, well, we're going to explore different theories about what the law may or may not mean. And then we'll sort of work it out later in the court system and see which sections of the marijuana law don't apply. We just had that case come down in the Court of Appeals that is really putting a lot of kinds of medication, the medibles, the oils, the tinctures, in kind of a limbo right now, isn't it?
It is. What we have with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act is two forms of defense. There's a Section 4 defense, and then there's a Section 8 defense. What the court ruling said was that for usable marijuana, they define two different kinds of marijuana. In one part of the act, it talks about usable marijuana, and the other part of the act, it talks about just marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act. So they decided that usable marijuana was only the buds. So basically what they did was they said everybody has to smoke marijuana instead of using topical oils and tinctures. You may still have a Section 8 defense, and I say may because that depends on the judge. You could get pulled over with a medical marijuana salve or topical oil, get arrested, go to court, and the judge may say, okay, you can use your Section 8 defense. Or the judge could say, I don't think you qualify for a Section 8 defense. So you're really at the mercy of the judge now completely with the concentrates or extracts of marijuana. And it's really disappointing because I know the intent of the voters was to allow marijuana for medicinal use.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they wanted everybody who got a card to smoke marijuana. I don't personally think that smoking is the most healthy way to ingest marijuana. I think that, I'll give an example. My dear friend Greg, I believe you knew him, had cancer, called me a couple years ago, and I couldn't understand him, but he just said, get over here. So I get to his house, and he has a tracheotomy.
Oh.
And a feeding tube. And he tells me, I've got cancer. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I need your help. And I'm saying, okay, what do you need? And he says, I need medical marijuana. I said, go get you some marijuana. He says, no, I can't smoke it. I need the liquid. Liquid, it's a food grade glycerin tincture, it's called. And it's so that he could put it in his feeding tube to help him with his nausea while he was going through his radiation and his chemotherapy. So that was what he used. Smoking marijuana would not help a cancer patient with a tracheotomy.
Yeah.
I think that would be very difficult on their throat. So.
And we have cases where children are being treated, and obviously you don't want to have 5- and 6-year-olds trying to smoke marijuana. That's certainly. I mean, actually, when I was a child, by the way, I was given marijuana for my asthma when I was a kid, and the Tancha's Pharmacy in Cleveland. They gave my parents. I was about 5 years old because I was having such severe asthma, and I would burn the little leaf thing in a bowl with a wet towel over my head, and because I didn't know how to smoke.
Right.
Was it voodoo?
I don't know, but I mean that was what they actually did in those days. It was the American American Hay Fever Association approved its use for a while.
Well, and the concern with this particular court case, of course, is we have a bunch of activist judges who are legislating from the bench. Clearly, the intent of the writers of the initiative, and I've spoken with them, was to allow all forms of medical marijuana, not just smokable marijuana. So they're absolutely appalled that this has happened, because what they did was they took one word in the law and they twisted it and they turned it and said, we're going to justify taking all of this away from these people with one word.
The usable word.
The usable word.
Yeah.
And usable was in the part where it says how much weight we're allowed to have. So usable was supposed to protect us from getting charged with the weight of seeds and stems, and that was the intent
Right.
of the authors of
It was
the law.
supposed to be the medically active portion that would be
So
weighed.
what we've seen with the Court of Appeals over and over and over again has been rulings that don't make any sense. They don't go along with the plain language of the law. They certainly don't go along with what the intent of the voters or the authors of the law were. So we have three choices now that we've come up with of how to resolve the issue. One would be if the attorney and the client decided to appeal to the Supreme Court. That's not going to happen anytime soon because it's been referred back to the lower court.
Yes.
So that's what's going to happen next.
I forgot about that. That's going to add significant time.
It is.
And money.
In the
Yes.
Carruthers case, yeah.
Yes. The other option would be to introduce a new bill, a new piece of legislation, ask the legislators to fix this for us. I think most of them are on our side on this issue. While we were lobbying for House Bill 4271, we spent a whole lot of time talking about the need for patients to have access to non-smokable forms of marijuana. So I think that luckily we have a head start on this issue because we have spent so much time discussing it. In fact, in our bullet points that we give to all the legislators, we talk quite a bit about non-smokable forms of medical marijuana.
Or could you just add a little amendment to 4271?
That's the other option. And with this being summer, things are of course moving slow. So I don't have a definite answer on if that's something that's going to be able to be done. But from our perspective, we would love to see that happen if it's logistically at all possible.
We've watched in other states where they'll put an abortion law on a motorcycle helmet bill if they want to. So it seems to me it would be logical to put it into 42.
There is an issue. House Bill 4271 is a simple majority bill, and because the MMMA was a voter initiated law, it requires a supermajority, 75%. So the bill as written only requires a simple majority because we didn't amend any of the original act. We just created new rules and new laws for a new entity that was never legislated before.
I see.
So the question is, can we slide an amendment in there that says that these places can manufacture and carry and distribute and give the protections to the patients and caregivers? If we can do that somehow, great. That would be just fantastic. But we're of course waiting for the attorneys and Legislative Services Bureau to work that all out.
It seems too logical, doesn't it?
Yes.
It really does. I mean, it's to me, in my simplistic way, it's people don't really understand medical marijuana and how it can be used.
No.
Why you wouldn't want a salve for arthritis
and let me tell you a wonderful arthritis story. A lovely lady that I know, she's 85 years old out in St. John's. She had arthritis, so her hands are, bent like this, and her husband was using the topical oil for his back. He had back surgery, and she ran out of gloves, and she used, she put it on him, and I saw her a couple of weeks later, and she opened her hands and said, "Look at my hands." She said, "I put that on, and a couple hours later, I opened my hands, and I'm knitting again."
Oh.
And it was just a really neat thing. And I said, "Well, you better go get your card now."
But we want you to smoke it.
No, yeah, I know.
Right. Oh,
so
that's true.
it's been
It's the
really
cigarette companies that are doing it.
it's been really frustrating because, and there are also children locally who have cancer.
Yes.
Brain cancer too, who have used liquid forms, edible forms of medical marijuana.
And what people don't realize is many of these really are not getting these young people high.
No.
They're the form of marijuana that doesn't have
Right.
that euphoric effect.
And that's something that the legislators are extremely interested in. There are strains of marijuana that have very high CBD and very low THC, and that's something I know they studied quite a bit in Israel and have been producing that there for quite some time now. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to the high CBDs and the low THCs so that they can get pain relief from the CBD with being able to function in their everyday life and not necessarily need to be high, especially, children. I'm really concerned right now about the people that have the very severe seizure disorders.
Terrible situation. I did that video on Steve Green, and
Oh,
he's
amazing.
He's an amazing young man, and the severity of his seizures are such that now that the judge has ordered him that he cannot use that medication, or is trying to order him not to use that, it's threatening his life.
Yeah.
And I
It's
just
the only
don't think
thing that has ever helped him.
it is. I mean, I met him first when he testified here on trying to have PTSD added to the list of problems for which you could take medical marijuana. What I'm concerned about, and one of the questions I have, I see a state like Colorado, and they went ahead and they just legalized marijuana. They just said, okay, we're tired of, let's not fiddle around with the details. We'll just go ahead and make marijuana legal, and then we don't have.
They actually regulated their distribution very well beforehand, though.
Yes.
And so that's, I know,
Would that be a quick
legalization
fix
is coming,
here?
I'm sure. Legalization is coming. There's no question about it. It will come.
But will that improve the situation for medical marijuana or only complicate it further?
I personally, as an advocate, I would like to see the medical program fixed so that it is a program that actually works for the patients.
Okay.
Before we even talk about legalization, I want to know, we have medical marijuana for a reason. Why is it 4 or 5 years later, patients are still struggling to get access to the medicine? People are still getting rated.
Yeah.
Now we're being told you can only smoke it. So what I want to see, I want to see everybody pick up the phone and call their legislator and say, help us. That is the very best thing that could happen right now. The whole law needs to be fixed. Absolutely.
As I read the bill, it surprised me because I kept substituting the word aspirin. If they were going to sell me aspirin, which is a medicine, and trust me, aspirin for me is a miracle drug. I mean, we would have to have it by prescription if it were invented now. It's such a potent drug.
Right.
But the law says things like communities can ban provisioning centers from the community. I mean, it seems to me that why isn't it treated like any other medicine? I mean, the law seemed to me when citizens passed it that they said it's medicine, we want people to be able to have it. Then why are we doing all this tap dance and making it so complicated? We don't do this for aspirin. We don't do this for steroids, even other drugs that are abused, like steroids.
And House Bill 4271 is a local option bill. And that was something, we worked with national organizations. We kind of looked at the polling for dispensaries. We looked at what do we think in a conservative government can we actually pass to make sure that there is some access for patients. And I know a lot of people don't like the local option. The local option means that municipalities who want to license, regulate, and allow just provisioning centers can do so. It means that the municipalities that don't want them don't have to have them.
Right.
Now, the Municipal League is very supportive of that concept. They want local control. There are some communities who say, we've only got a town that's a mile long. We really don't have a place for a provisioning center here. Okay. Now, my argument would be if there's a, drugstore, why can't we have a,
Right.
Obviously, in a perfect world, absolutely, we would across the board implement provisioning centers across the state. In a conservative legislature, it's not going to happen.
And if the argument is crime, then please, please, please don't put a bank on the corner.
Exactly. They're more likely to be robbed. But I'll tell you,
No more Rolex shops.
No more Rolex shops.
When my friend Greg had cancer, and he's passed away now, and he needed relief right away, we struggled to find the liquid glycerin tincture that he needed. We went to it was after the court case where the dispensaries in Lansing started shutting down, and we drove around, couldn't find them. We had to drive all the way to Ann Arbor to
Same.
get it. But I'll tell you what, I was very grateful to have somewhere to go, even though we had to drive to get him that medicine that he needed. So
Thank you so much, Robin. It's wonderful to have you tonight. I hope you'll return frequently and tell us what's happening with that bill, especially as we get closer to a vote this fall. Please come back and join us next Monday night. This has been Lansing Online News Radio, LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. And click. Wonderful. I'm sorry we were